a webinar and we'll put it on our website in a couple of days. So we're glad to share the wisdom of our panelists, and we would appreciate folks to share with others. Okay, so let me get started knowing that it's a couple minutes, but I'm going to go ahead and do the intro. Cindy, are you good with that?
I love it.
Love it. All right, Stretch Strategic Leaders. Today, I have introduced, but will again, our esteemed panelists. They are in all different stages of their life and seasons in career. Cindy Amix is at Matandy Steel, and she has done a number of different things, is currently in sales and marketing. James Cardy, Fifth Third, relationship manager, and we actually work with a number of similar clients. I appreciate the wisdom he brings. Alex, how do you say your last name, Alex? Help me.
Marmaleo.
Marmaleo. Okay, so many syllables, and I have dyslexia that I like break down after 3. So Alex joins us from Columbus. He's our regional expert, and he is with Crane Renovation Group. They own 2 roofing brands, commercial and residential brands, and he brings a financial perspective. And Emily, I should be able to say your last name, shouldn't I?
Maybe Rentschler.
Close.
There's a lot of consonants in it.
I would have nailed that. I would have nailed it. So Emily's with us, and she is a growth marketing specialist with Swivel, and we've known Swivel for a while. We love Swivel and the Simca team and what they're doing, really helping with sales enablement. And if you haven't seen any of her posts, I try to share quite a few of them. They're very informative. I love what they're doing. So first of all, thank you to our team, the Stretch team. We'll introduce them, and for you guys taking some time out of your day to invest in yourself and to hear about this talent acquisition and retention constraint. And then what can we do about it? You know, what's on the minds of our leaders? What are they thinking about? And we're here to say there's not a one answer. I think all of our clients are trying many different things. And I think the flexibility of trying things, and also the flexibility when you deal with certain people, is important. So I got to make sure, how can I mute other people? No, I think we're good. So everyone just mute might be a helpful one. And the last one is that as I look at the slides, that we need to get rid of the stereotypes and the beliefs and have an open mind for the next hour and a half. All right, folks, I'm not sure. I don't like to mute people because I like people to enjoy, but if folks could mute, probably that'd be great. So if you have questions, please type them into the chat. We'll do our best to address them. The panelists are going to share. They're going to have about 10 or 15 minutes to share their perspective. Feel free to interrupt us, but we'll give them their time to get through their slides, and we're going to have time at the end for questions. Feel free to introduce yourself so we know who's in the room, who's in the chat, and we are very thankful that you took time out to join us today. So I'm Darcy. I'm the strategist of the group, although my whole team is very strategically minded. Been doing and working with growth-minded organization and people for about 20 years, and I love it. And this is one of the ways that we share learnings, is through these Stretch chats. Cindy
Weininger, and I am the people person, as most of you guys know. I love helping people figure out what makes them tick and how they work on a team and how they win, and how they go home in a great mood every day and feel like they're making an impact and through who you are as a human being. So it's an honor to be here with everybody. And, you know, I just want to call out, because Darcy was talking about, like, she goes, I'm dyslexia. And so these names are what they are. You know, I just wanted to give a shout out, Darcy, of modeling who we are. We don't ever feel like everything's got to be, you know, a buttoned up perfect way. We're constantly in a learning mode. Our team is that way. We've got Nancy, who's on board on the call with us, who handles all the back end stuff. Jane, who does marketing for us. Riley, who handles a lot of the career, where people are headed career wise. And then Mandy, who's an amazing curriculum writer. And I think the heart of us is how much we like growing and learning about other people and serving other people. So that humility of, this is the way I am. So take it and, work with us and work together. So Darce, love working with you and just appreciate that about you.
Thank you. When you have 3 teenagers who point out every time you say a word wrong, you just lead with it. You're just like, I'm going to get it wrong, because that's just going to happen. I mean, I got 3 of them. They're constantly looking for me to say a word wrong. So it happens. All right. So let's just a little bit more. I know we know most of you. We love to do this. We work with mid-sized companies in a growth phase. Most of them are regional. We don't get on an airplane, although we get on more clients where we're doing it now. And we really do this stretch strategic planning, this comprehensive approach to planning and leadership development and training. Cindy does a lot of executive coaching. You're going to start seeing a lot of training out of us. She's always been doing it, but we think that's a big way that we're going to help build bench and capacity for our clients and people we don't know. Here's what, as we tell all of our clients, you got to have differentiators. You got to have them measurable. We got to have people believe that you are the expert in what you do, and those are ours. Again, we role model strategy. We spend time on this with all of our clients and in these stretch chats, because we believe so strongly in every one of our clients being clear with their purpose and why they do what they do. And we do this so people enjoy the next level of growth. We want you to enjoy growing, and you'll see us having fun today. We love this stuff. We want you to be alive. We want you to be energized. It's part of our value, and one of our core values. Second one is lifetime learning. We spend a lot. Simca, I appreciate that you recognize that about our brand. We want to teach. Most of our clients teach, most of our partners teach, and that's a common value I believe that we share with a lot of folks on this call. Engagement and empowerment. You'll see it. What we understand we do, value the individual, which is why we're letting the individuals talk. We always feel strongly about that. And feedback is a gift. You've heard us say that. We say it all the time. Trust and listen. And it takes time to say the last 5%. We'll talk. That is when you have to say something hard, but you care about the person, so you say it. Talked about our differentiators and our vision. I mean, we're scaling, people. We're moving. 1 million stretch leaders. As you know, in strategy, you don't always know how you're going to do it. We're a little nervous about it, but we have a vision. We're saying it out loud. We're telling people, you're going to start seeing a lot more from us as it relates to capacity building. Cindy,
come be a part of it. It's not us. It's
everyone.
Impacting people together.
Yep. So this part, because I think it's key to this conversation, is this relationship with culture. You want to cover this?
Yeah, we really look at this and want people just, take this and copy it. I mean, we're known for giving anything and everything we can away, which is why we do these chats and summits. We work for people, and we have to know how to work together in order to get that higher level of engagement and high performance team. And as a leader, you role model. Everybody's watching. If you're doing it and it's the right thing, they're going to do it. If not, oops. The new normal is not an annual review. It is us talking with one another on a regular basis. Text us or email us if you want a copy of our high performance people one-on-one training. And people in companies need to have a plan. It's a crazy world. I this morning got off the phone with somebody that 29% of their workforce is out today due to COVID related work or COVID related illness. And we want to encourage that doing all the time is not going to get us to the place of culture and growth. We have to be spending 20% of our time on strategy. And that gives you that knowledge that I'm working on the right thing and the comfort to push through when the going gets hard and your brain says, ooh, this is scary. You just got to be able to lean in and trust that you know how to get there, and you don't have to have all the answers. And there's amazing people who are willing to help one another. I look at who's on here right now, and I think of how many times you guys have been an encouragement to me, to us, our team, with ideas. And I hope we're doing the same for you guys.
So I'll share Andy Schuster, works with Cindy at Matandy, shared with me a couple of quotes that really play in, and I really like them. There's someone he follows, which is Dan Rockwell. He's a leadership person, and I follow people. Who are you following? But he said two things. One is, which I love this, your capacity, I have to make sure I say it right, so I give him kind of your capacity to grow determines your capacity to lead. And I love that. I'm like, we talk about lifetime leaders, but it doesn't mean that we're ever done learning about things or ourselves. And I mean, that was so powerful. Your capacity to grow determines your capacity to lead. I love that. The other one that he talked about is right now, a lot of people feel like they're in quicksand. I mean, you're just plodding along, and it is tough to be in quicksand. Let's be honest. So I wanted to recognize that feeling. And today we hope to pull you out of some quicksand when it comes to some of these conversations, because we get it. We're all in it. I think we all feel that. So let's just build our capacity to lead. And then let's recognize we're all in a little bit of quicksand, and we got to figure out who are we reaching up to get ourselves out. Because by the way, if you've ever been in quicksand, you can't get yourself out. Like, you have to reach out. That's the whole deal. The last one that I just appreciate about our panelists and most people in here is that 90% of leadership comes from your character, who you are. I mean, people follow you because of what you represent. And I just value that about really pretty much everyone on this call, is that I love the character of the people that we get to work with every day. This is our model. We keep talking about it, but it does start with healthy leaders, which all of those things that I just said is the definition of a healthy leader. They want to grow, they recognize self-awareness, they are visionary, and they communicate. Winning strategies. Again, today's conversation is to give you some strategies to get you out of quicksand when you think about talent acquisition and retention. And all of this is Cindy's model on team dynamics, which is how do we build more high-performing teams? I'm thinking about this in my son's basketball team, and he was telling me today it's toxic. Nobody on that team wants anyone else to get better. And I'm like, that's such a bummer. And it starts with the coach who's yelling at them after every play, what they did wrong, not what they did right. And I'm trying, for those of you who know me, not to say something, but I'm dying inside. But I mean, I'm dying. But anyways, it's all about high-performing teams, sports teams, work teams, church teams, anything. The better we can build each other up, the better we'll be. So here's our current reality. No one is going to argue with this. It is a state of where we are. And I put these are two posts from my LinkedIn recently. It is the wild west of recruiting. It is every day. One of my clients, or I'm hearing about a client who's trying something new. And if you're not trying something new, you're done. You've got to. We don't know what's going to work. We're all trying to figure out what's going to help our client, our employees, our talent. But I'll tell you, but you got to keep trying. I mean, people are quitting. They're quitting in the first couple of years, and they're quitting at the retirement side. Those folks that were going to stay are leaving. They're done. So you've got this squashed middle trying to take care of everyone, and they're in pain. So we got to recognize there's a lot of change going on, and what are you doing different? And then the second one here, I just thought this was cool. I love this stuff. And when you think about an office, and it used to be a workplace, that is no longer relevant. It's no longer relevant. Why are we even calling it that? It's a connection. It's a community. And who is thinking about that? Who is turning their office into a clubhouse? I love that concept. And I think what you're going to hear from our panelists is that that's what they're looking for. It doesn't matter what season. But I think we need to stop thinking about our office as a workplace. And then the last one here is Cindy, who has been saying this forever. And then Cindy, you want to talk about the Great Resignation, which everyone's heard about. So.
Yeah. I mean, it is, it's become like the word pivot and whatever else these days.
Strategy.
But yeah. This article was really important for me when I read it, because they're now taking the great resignation and they're strapping it further into that. What's even worse about than the great resignation is how many people have kind of resigned, but they're staying in their jobs, and that the future for people is, really, how do I get motivated again? And this is at the heart of what, we're gonna let the speakers talk about today, is what's important, what's inspiring, what is the thing that gives people joy in their work. And I kind of roughly appreciate that the people who have resigned took a stance and went, I'm not going to take it. But I also, it just empowers me even more to have a million stretch leaders of people who feel very strongly that they are empowered with their life. They're driving their own car. They're demanding things about, what they get to accomplish at work. And that we have what we look back on and call the great re-engagement. That's my hope and prayer, is the power of what we accomplish at work feeds over into everything in our life. And I want to learn from these different generations, so I know how to lead people differently, and that we're going to passionately go out and bring purpose and meaning and value and pay and all those things back to work, and that we're going to have a great re-engagement.
Awesome. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and move to our first panelist, which is Alex. I'm going to stop sharing just for a second, and hopefully he will magically appear on the screen and then introduce himself. So let's see if this works. Alex, start talking.
So my name is Alex Marmoleo. I work for the Crane Renovation Group as the Financial Planning and Analysis Manager. And I'll be sharing some of my opinions on generational groupings, why they have importance at times, why they don't, and what it takes to lead them today.
And one of my most favorite conversations with Alex is when he talked about, in one of our upcoming classes, self-awareness. And for him, self-awareness is a strength, but it's not every generation thinks about it that way. Not every leader thinks about it that way. But I really appreciate that quote, Alex. It's made me really think differently about that.
All right. So first off, I just really want to thank Darcy, Cindy, Jane, Nancy. I heard some other names in there as well.
Alex, break that.
I think we have a couple. What do I do, Cindy?
I would mute you for a second. All right, Alex, say something again.
I'm here.
Yeah, I think Darcy, stay muted for just a minute, and let's see if let's let him get through presentation. I'm not sure why it was doing that.
Okay, so first off, I'll just thank the entire Stretch team. Thank you guys so much for having me, putting this on. Like I said, I'm really going to be talking about kind of generational groupings, why I feel they have importance, why sometimes I don't think they do, and we can kind of go from there. So if you want to go to the next slide, Darcy.
Yes, and whoever's got the dog in the background, if you don't mind muting, that'd be awesome.
So my key talking points today, I'm going to be kind of covering 4 areas. I'll be discussing my generational group, millennials, and why I believe they have a crucial role in bridging the gap from past to present. External factors or internal values. One has more significance than the other.
All right, sorry, one more time. Darcy, just go ahead and mute everybody, but speaker.
I am not sure how to mute everybody. If someone wants to tell me how to mute everybody. That is so fun.
You just need to mute David Knowlton. That's where the feedback is coming from. David Knowlton.
Okay.
Hit on David's picture.
I'm finding him. Anyone can find him. Thank you.
He just did it. I think
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure he's still alive. I think a pit bull just might have eaten him, or the cougar. So nothing against pit bulls. They're lovely pets, but.
Okay, thank you, DDA. All right, let's go.
All right, so I'm going to talk, I'll kind of start from the top here. My generational group, millennials, why I believe it plays a crucial role in bridging the gap from past to present. External factors or internal values, does one have more significance than the other? And then we'll kind of do a pairing of that, of external factors and accelerants and the role they play when we layer in human psychology, so nature versus nurture. And then lastly, I'll cover our key qualities of a good leader and how to navigate it all. And if you want to go to the next slide.
Gotcha.
So I'm more than happy to date myself. And while I say that, with each year that passes, a little bit of that fades, right? I was born in the late 80s, which makes me a millennial, defined as 1981 to 96. But then some have even broken this subset down into two age groups of 25 to 32 and 33 to 40. I think that based on my age, I have been given an extremely unique perspective on daily life, business, and corporate America, as well as key traits and characteristics that are crucial for any leader to possess to be successful. So I say this because even though I am viewed as a millennial who probably didn't grow up knowing a world without technology, I actually grew up in a world where cell phones didn't exist. I completed book reports by finding books using the Dewey Decimal System, and yet I took notes from professors in college on a laptop. I stream movies to my TV while watching a soccer game on my computer, all while texting my buddies a funny meme that I saw, right? So we've really seen this massive transition, and the innovation and advancement that we have seen, not just in technology, but equally our brain's ability to process the data and information supplied to it seems almost unquantifiable. So from my childhood, what I would only assume teenagers now probably deem an extension of the Stone Age, the life cycle of inception of new products and ideas and theories has never been shorter. So we must give ourselves more credit and remove the stigma that our childhood and adolescence were the most important times of our lives for growth and learning. We must acknowledge that the current state of the world does not allow for a break from development. This to me is the explanation of higher stress, electronic fatigue, and the inability to truly turn off. So I believe rejection of change and innovation is off the table at this point. It was never really a good option, but if made now, will lead to both ourselves and our businesses becoming obsolete faster than ever. Rather, in this age, we must be pioneers of change, healthy adversity seekers, and flawless executioners. So if you want to go to the next slide, Darcy.
Yeah.
So this is a bit of a busy slide, but hang in there with me. I'm going to start on the left and then we'll cover the one on the right. To me, this at its core is a conversation about nature versus nurture. So regarding generations, I believe we've gone too far in blanket statements and haven't considered what is at the core, humans and subsequently human psychology. So I'm sure Cindy will be really happy with my take on some of this stuff, but I want us to understand the disconnect that generational stereotypes can create when we look at internal values and external factors, right? So let's do this by breaking down two of the most common stereotypes of millennials and then my personal response or feeling towards them. And this may be a good exercise for you to do as well with your own generations and their perceived traits. But if we look at the first one, perception one is millennials expect and demand instant gratification. So what do my internal values tell me? Never in my life have I expected something that is not earned. So I grew up being taught that hard work and dedication pays off. The heavier the lift, the longer it's going to take. Nothing is earned overnight. Yet, external factors tell me I can now order any basic need online, and it can be delivered the next day. I can look up any question I have on Google within seconds. Everything is at my fingertips. So you can already see the disconnect occurring here between core values I was taught and the environment we currently live in. Just because the world around me allows for instant gratification does not mean I automatically overlay that into all facets of life. My expecting a package within 2 to 3 days does not mean I expect a promotion or a raise in the same amount of time. Promotions are for a select few and are earned over time with consistent delivery of above expectation results. So let's look at the second perception here. So work-life balance is everything to a millennial. I personally, again, my internal value is I got my work ethic from my mother and my father. My mother worked multiple jobs growing up, and my father had a cell phone that was attached to his car. My sister and I would sit in the back seat. We'd have to be quiet for sometimes for some important business calls. There's never really a day off. And seeing that he was successful, always available for customers, and always put the job first was what molded my mentality and vision towards work ethic and work balance. Then the external factors, though, in this day and age are telling me jobs are promoting work-life balance all the time, the ability to work from home, flexible hours, all these things that I personally feel are unrealistic for my own goals. You can again see kind of the disconnect of internal and external here. So I took my first true vacation this last year at the ripe age of 33. I'd never taken off more than a day here or there. I took my first full week-long vacation. I worked late into nights, worked on weekends, and even had a key made for my last job to get into the office on the weekends. It's extremely tough for me to disconnect, yet I'm being told that's very important for somebody my age. This assumption honestly adds nothing more but stress to me, thinking that there's something wrong with me or that I'm unable to disconnect, unable to turn off. So we can see that while these two perceptions may be most prevalent to my generation as external factors that, yes, can influence me and my peers, it does not necessarily mean that my internal values correlate with them. So Darcy, if you want to go to the next slide.
Love it. You're making us think, Alex.
Good. So now that the precedence has been set, that there are more layers than just blanket assumptions, which do we put first, external or internal? Do we give one more weight than the other? I don't think there needs to be more emphasis put on one or the other, but rather we need to examine the breadth and complexity of these items and not just look at them in a vacuum. So it is my opinion that outside influence or generational events, i.e. nature, will always change and be a variable, while the constant is human nurture and how we respond, react, and evolve to said events. So when we look at this through the lens of examples like extroverts and introverts and how they respond to differentiators and accelerants, then we can start to truly understand how to lead groups. So I think a good exercise for each individual is taking a step back and looking at major events and accelerants within the last 50 to 60 years, putting a slight escalator on the most recent and how they've affected generational groupings, but also us as human beings. So if I take a look at this, some of my call outs would be in 2001, 9/11 occurs, right? 2007, the iPhone is introduced. 2008, the first Black president is elected. 2016, Donald Trump is elected. 2017, the Me Too movement occurs. And then in 2020, we saw social justice take center stage. And of course, COVID, right? It wouldn't be a conversation without discussing that. So two of the key accelerants I want to discuss that I believe have changed the course of every American, as well as every human being, is the evolution of technology in our daily lives and COVID. So while technology is somewhat of a broad term, there are certain avenues we can go with and go down to say communication and information, right? From landline phones to cell phones, to emails, to instant messaging, to texting, to social media. I want us to think about how the progression has shifted our human psychology and tendencies. You can see that the shift is from complete extroversion to introversion, from hour-long talks on the phone, where your only focus was the conversation at hand, versus talking on the phone and multitasking while you're shopping or doing other things, to limited human interaction of a social media post. The world was previously built for extroverts, whereas now we're seeing a shift towards more introverted day-to-day activities, right? So COVID to me has only further accelerated this. From Netflix from your couch instead of going to a movie, to sports packages for a fraction of the price from your couch instead of going to a game, to grabbing your food and taking it home and eating on the couch instead of sitting in a restaurant. Are we seeing more introverted tendencies specifically in our youth? Why make a phone call when I can send a text or an email? We've all heard that said within the office, and I think we're starting to see that trend a little bit more. Even the current work from home mentality that is geared towards youth would further this theory, and that it allows introverts to thrive. But what about those extroverts? And what about challenging introverts? Self-awareness and awareness of your team and their psychology build is key again to layer over these events and accelerants. At-home work may empower your introverted staff, but may be detrimental to your extroverts.
Mm.
Whereas the inverse could very well be true, where in-office attendance may hinder your introverts, but empower your extroverts. Is this why a hybrid approach may be the way of the future?
Mhm.
It challenges generational tendencies. It challenges human tendencies. It would, in theory, allow for introverts and extroverts to both thrive a percentage of the work week, all while challenging themselves on some days to work in an environment that will cause growth and uncomfortableness. I think in returning to the previous point, if we are not challenging ourselves to grow and be a little uncomfortable at times, then we are not developing ourselves as professionals. Just because there is a path of least resistance does not mean that it should be taken. So let's take a look at the next slide here of key qualities of a good leader.
Love
So,
this.
I've outlined 5 qualities that I do think that are key for any leader to embody. Consistency is the first one. I think it can be displayed in many ways. It can be as simple as ensuring that you greet employees with the same attitude each day. It shows strength in never being too emotional when met with adversity. At its basis, consistency can mirror equality at times. Standard operating procedures and practices, while mundane to some, also mean that each and every employee is met with the same answer, regardless of who poses the question. Ensuring that the company has a solid foundation where the majority of its work falls into rules, not exceptions, makes any job more efficient and easier. Battling adversity with the same mindset and calmness that all tasks can be completed with the right amount of effort is essential. So the next one I want to talk about is accountability. I think this is crucial for any competitive company. While many people fear attrition from harsher environments, we must also not forget that competitiveness drives business. There has to be balance. If you do not hold individuals accountable, any culture can quickly turn upside down, right? And your hardest workers will carry the majority of the burden of work. This instantly leads to fatigue on their part or them outright leaving. Culture is set from the top down. It's imperative to set standards as well as clear expectations so as to ensure equality amongst workers and the lift of their role on a team. So the next part of this is communication and making sure that you communicate clearly. Leaders have to understand to communicate with their entire staff as a whole, but also with individuals, specifically direct reports. Projecting one's preferred method of communication on others can quickly lead to employees feeling isolated. This also leans heavily on consistency. Setting clear expectations of how a company communicates is extremely important. So examples of this are, we send all updates pertaining to customers on Facebook, right? We send all company functions and event updates on LinkedIn, and we send all updates pertaining to benefits, healthcare, payroll through emails to our employees. While this may seem simple, we can often overwhelm and flood our employees with too many channels of communication. Selecting and defining what will be used to communicate is necessary, I think. And then we're going to talk about receptive to change or, pivoting, like Cindy brought up before. We are no longer given the luxury of time and patience in this corporate landscape. That being said, it does not mean that a shoot first, aim second mentality needs to be implemented. So simply ensuring that we constantly challenge our current methods, make sure that we have an awareness of what our future is, what outside factors there are, and lastly, doing exploratory work to ensure we are keeping up with our industry is essential. To further the last point, I think at times there's a fear of being half in or half out on projects, but that should not always be the case. If there is a belief that there is a potential for a disruptor in your market, sometimes exploratory projects can allow for your company to still be early adopters while balancing the risk of being the first through the door or completely left behind. So, how do we plan for this? What better way to forecast and strategically plan for your business than to have baby boomers and millennials tackle the present and 3 to 5 year plan, and lastly, ensure that there is a presence of Gen Zs in the room to learn and contribute to discussions of the 6+ year vision. Listening to generations and what is important to them can provide key insight into understanding threats and opportunities. And then lastly is follow through. So to me, there is nothing more important than a company delivering what they have set as an expectation. It is the final piece of the puzzle. It may not always be the expected result. There may be times that a pivot may occur. However, if something is learned, then it is never a loss. An advantage is still gained. I think this very much mirrors my favorite quote. It's by James Joyce, and it's that a man of genius makes no mistakes. His errors are volitional and are the portals of discovery. So as long as we are learning, it is added value. Simply showing up is not a victory. Deliverance of results and follow through are what any culture will be measured by in the end. So Darcy, if you want to go to the next slide. So lastly, to kind of sum all this up and bring it all together, if you haven't been able to tell, individualization is a key belief of mine. Everybody has a seat at the table. Everyone has a role to play. No one is any more important than the other. While generational groupings may help in some scenarios, I would emphasize that we must never lose sight of individualization. I can teach an individual many things: Excel, industry knowledge, presentation skills, but what cannot be taught is passion to problem solve and high expectations for what is deemed a good result.
From both of us.
Spend a lot of time saying, well, this person wasn't right for the role, they were too quiet, or well, this person wasn't right for the role because they were too pushy. But equally, we should look at skills and traits and say, how can we empower this individual? One of the best things is teaching self-awareness, what Darcy spoke to before, and emotional intelligence. So we are complex beings. Simply stating that out loud to your employees can already set the tone of, hey, we all have good days and days where we're off. This is an environment where we want to learn about why that is, how to process emotions, and to respond accordingly to move the needle in a positive direction. This can shift any environment to one of acceptance and learning of growth. Never forget that humility and acknowledging when others are right or you have learned something is often met with a positive response from employees. Lastly, I cannot emphasize enough that I believe positive environments and culture are everything. Negative talk towards a specific employee or talk about individuals not present in the room is a direct reflection of you as a leader. You must address these at all times. We cannot fear challenging someone and saying, I'd like to keep that talk to a minimum, or it sounds like we need to set up a time for the three of us to meet. This confrontation, while uncomfortable, is of the utmost importance, right? So toxic cultures are the great Achilles heel of any company. Stereotypes and assumptions can quickly divide when in reality, they should provide the potential to learn about ourselves and one another. My final point, and I think Darcy kind of stole a little bit of my thunder here, but it's actually that the best advice I think I can give would be any leader would simply focus on awareness of oneself, others, and how complex we all are, persistence, and always learning more about this. Thank you all so much for your time today.
Awesome. All right. That's so great. Thank you, Alex. We can all silent fireworks. I'm not sure exactly what to do with all the fireworks there. Alex, that was fantastic. Let us go to our next speaker. And I'm going to make sure I know who is next right here. I think it's Cindy. So let me put Cindy up here. And then I'm going to let Cindy introduce herself. But I've known Cindy for a long time. Not that, I don't know, 4 years now. Really have grown to appreciate Cindy is always focused on people and communication. Clearly she's in sales and marketing, but I love how she approaches situations. And I'm really appreciate that she's going to share her wisdom with us today. So let me just bring her up. Cindy, can you come up on my screen? Or yeah.
Sure. Can you guys, am I there?
Yeah, there you are.
My view is not-
Perfect. All right, I'm going to get to your slides. And do you want to say anything as we move to the slides?
Sure. So just to introduce myself just a little bit, it's an honor to be here and speak with the panel that is here. And thank you for all of you that have joined, especially thanks to Darcy and Cindy and their team for, putting this together. They not just putting this particular, session together, but, they're constantly pushing me to be better. I took a leadership course, recently. It was a 4-week course called Stretch Your Impact, which I highly recommend. And we were asked to really stretch ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, do things that challenge us and push us, get uncomfortable. And somehow a week after I took that course, I signed up and I'm in the process of training for a marathon. So,
Oh my gosh, yes. Love
so
it.
they truly do stretch us in many ways. So thank you. I've been in the career that I'm in for 35 years, 3 different companies. It's the steel service center industry, and we buy steel from steel mills, and then we are a value-added processor. So we process steel and then ship it to customers throughout the United States that make a variety of different products: garage doors, metal studs, shelving, office partitions, anything that steel is made of. So I've been doing this for 35 years, and it's been a great career. So just a little background there. I've been in a managerial position just for about the past 9 years. I wasn't hired specifically to manage a team, but it evolved over time. I'm a firm believer that you don't necessarily need a title to be a leader, but in my career here at Matandy proves that. And I think I even said in my interview with you guys, and you even put on some of your documents, like, you can't teach someone to lead or to sell. It's simply being relatable to others. And I again, that's proof in my career, and I firmly believe that too. So I'm going to share just some leadership lessons that I've learned throughout my life and my career. Most of them, as you can see on the screen here, speak for themselves, but I've tried to put a little personal short story to each of them, just to help and again, my perception and my feeling of each of these. So know your worth. Again, I think that speaks for itself, but an example of that for me was early in my career. I worked for a family-owned company, and I'd been there about 10 years, and the owner decided to sell the company. And prior to the sale being finalized, I was asked to sign a non-compete agreement because I didn't have one, for the original company when I started. So I'd been in sales long enough to know that by doing this, it was, going to potentially take away the ability to earn a living down the road, should I decide to leave there. So I mustered up the courage to ask my boss if they would consider some type of compensation for doing that. And I was told I'd have to talk to the CEO of the new company. And within a couple of weeks, a face-to-face meeting was set. We're in a private office sharing stories, about how we both got into the steel business. And, while I shared many things, and he did too, I got in the steel business originally because I was a babysitter for a vice president of the first company I worked for. I had no previous sales experience when I jumped into this, and I had no college degree, but I loved what I was doing, and I loved the team that I was working with, and I was really excited about the future. So I leave the office after that meeting, and I call my husband as I'm driving down the road, and I'm like, I think I just blew it. My chances of asking for something, just probably flew out the window because, all I kept thinking about is how insignificant the things that I shared with him, might have sounded. But he reassured me, they know your numbers, they know the impact you're making, have some confidence in yourself. And so 3 days later, I get a call from our then president saying, hey, the paperwork for your non-compete is here and ready to be signed. And by the way, we have a check for $40,000 for you. So
Yeah, awesome.
Needless to say, that was a life-changing moment and a lifelong lesson in knowing my value and my worth. So,
Love it.
again, that's speaks for itself. And again, I have 2 daughters, and I try to, teach them to, those same lessons. You don't get anything unless you ask for it. So the next one of courage and vulnerability, putting ourselves out there, and even if we're, exposing ourselves to judgment and criticism, it's super hard. I'm a people pleaser, and so this is not easy for me, but my big thing is if I see something that needs to be done, do it. Don't always have to ask for permission. And again, this is kind of a funny story that goes along with that for me. I had been with the Matandy for about a month, and I noticed that my boss had a couple framed diplomas laying on his floor, leaning against the wall. And he said they've been there for a year. I just don't know where to put them. And so the decision, has nothing to do with what I was hired to do on my day-to-day responsibilities, but I immediately wanted to help for some reason. So one day he was out for lunch, and I grabbed our maintenance guy and I asked if he would hang them on his wall. And when he walked in, he just smiled and loved where they looked and was happy it was done. So I think the lesson there, just is, showing him that I wasn't afraid to make a decision on my own, and having the confidence in yourself and the decisions that you do make builds and earns trust and respect. And in that case, he's never forgotten that. So, again, putting yourself out there is never a bad thing. Tough conversations. Again, I think Alex might have touched on that, as one of his big leadership lessons. And it isn't ever easy to have those tough conversations, but I think most of the time when we do offer that honest and candid feedback, Darcy and Cindy love to say feedback is a gift. And I've used that so much since I've known you guys. It isn't pleasant, but in most cases, I found that people, do end up coming back and saying thank you and appreciate it. So a story around that for me was in my first couple years as a manager here, we had a sales rep who was decent in her role. She was a little rough around the edges, but she wasn't gelling with the team. And in her defense, she was kind of tossed into, a job and asked to perform, and didn't really have a mentor or the support that she needed. I don't think the person that was, responsible for the sales team at the time took the time to really listen and hear her goals and aspirations and what she needed or wanted. But I sat down with her, and, we both agreed that if she was going to succeed long-term, we needed to make some changes. So we started from the beginning and moved her into a support role, gave her the tools she needed, and helped her with, continuous education opportunities, mentoring and coaching. She embraced that and in the direction that we were taking, and worked her tail off, did everything that she was asked. So basically, I think the message there was taking a step back and working on fundamentals for a couple years. We then moved her back into a sales role, and here we are 5 years later, and she's our best sales rep. So if we hadn't had that tough conversation back then, she would have continued to, go through the motions. We probably both would have been frustrated, and she may have ended up leaving for something different, or we moved her somewhere else. And she's really is a rock star, and we're lucky to have her on our team. So, and then the next one is just the energy you bring. Again, I think it speaks for itself, but an example there, we try to have meetings Mondays, huddles, and just start our week. And Monday mornings, it's hard to rally the group together and, have everybody excited to start the week. So I think, your energy introduces yourself before you even speak. So the way I show up on Monday mornings and every day is super impactful. And as a leader, my attitude and my energy is contagious, whether it's good or bad. So great responsibility there to, constantly practice and remind myself that how important that is. And then I have being confident in my leadership style, and I kind of want to just incorporate that with the last one, integration of whole self, because I think they do go hand in hand. And I didn't realize it until I was really putting these thoughts together. So, I think Darcy mentioned, I'm a people person, a communicator. I love bringing people together. And, so many times I think we wait until someone tells us that we're good, or that our ideas are good, or that we're making a difference. And believing in ourselves as leaders is, that's super important. I think there wasn't a role here for me when I started as far as a management role. I left a very well-established company, at the top of my game, coming to a company that was, happy to bump along, and they were doing well and successful, but really had no growth mindset in some of the, leadership roles. So I saw that as an opportunity, and, growth at my top of mind. So again, I think, just knowing that I could make a difference and believing in that has helped me tremendously. And then again, incorporating that into the integration of whole self, bringing people together, creating unity, and a culture of purpose-driven people who want to leave the office at the end of the day feeling like they've made a difference. That's what I love. And in the manufacturing sector and industry, that can sometimes be seen as a weakness or too soft. Some folks call it fluff. But again, I believe in it. We live it as best we can. And I continue to push others to do the same. Leading with empathy and compassion is really the only thing that I know. So no one's taught me that specifically, but it's just an extension of who I am. So again, I think being confident in the leadership style that you bring to the table, and then, that if that is part of who you are, then that's great. I think, bringing those two together is a natural thing.
Well, I think that's the power, Cindy, for you. And, part of the generational is that you're a mom, right? And so you can't help but think about that too, and bring it to work, both from just how you show up. So I think that's awesome. I love your lessons here. And it makes me, literally think about my kids. I want how we show up at work is how we show up in our life. And I think this is a good reminder for all of us. It's awesome. Thank you.
And then, last but not least, the women in the male dominated workplace. So, diversity, we all know, is a necessity. It's a smart thing for small businesses, especially, teams that are more diverse can and do outperform, their peers at every level. So, if you're a CEO, you're going to be better. But, if you're an entry level employee at the same company, you're going to do better. The fact is that the more diverse groups are stronger and work better together. So, some of the things that I faced early on in my career, and my first boss telling me how lucky I was to be in the role that I was in, making the money that I was making. I'm a female, I'm a working mom, didn't have a degree. I did find myself working harder than some of my male counterparts just to prove myself, speeding to work after getting myself ready and my child ready and dropping her off. And I remember specifically one time leaving my daughter, who was about 6 months old, with a babysitter that I didn't even know, because my normal one was on vacation or took a day off at the last minute. But I look back and I think, oh my gosh, how could I leave my 6-month daughter, with a babysitter that I barely even knew, just because I had to get to work. But again, those are the things that we did. And, here at Matandy, we do have an amazing group of guys within the organization who have witnessed the impact that women have made. Within our company, they support us, they make space for us, and they really do lean on us to make really big decisions. So it's been Matandy's been great for that. Doesn't mean that it's always easy. I do find myself pushing back, but being able to have tough conversations, honest conversations, when I feel like somebody might be dismissing my ideas, talking it through and just learning together. Like I said earlier, having 2 daughters of my own, they come to me for advice. They share things with me. And, when I hear myself coaching them through a situation, it reassures me to do the same thing that I'm telling them and suggesting to them. And
What
then,
yeah, go ahead.
and so it's been an amazing journey and one that I'm super proud of. And I have to go back and say that the story about the first boss telling me how lucky I was. By the way, he's been a great guy and a wonderful mentor to me, but it's kind of ironic that today he works for me.
Oh, I love it.
You're entertaining. So we
Love it.
kind of joke
I
about that.
love- You know what it made me think of, and James, get on because you're next. But what it made me think of, Cindy, is that there are plenty of new moms in your position that we should have empathy for, that are maybe in
Mhm.
that same spot. I know some folks on this call who might have had a child recently, Amy McCord, who may be, you know, really thinking about some of the things that you're talking about. And that's part of what we need to, as leaders, to recognize. If you're a male, you never left your maybe with a child with a babysitter you didn't know, but that's what we just did. So if we come in a little frazzled, maybe you might want to ask us, yeah, our babysitter didn't show up today. Like we literally had to find someone we don't know. That perspective is powerful for us and the males on the call to recognize how hard it is. Really, really. And we do not want to shut that door, but we need to make sure we recognize the empathy and the understanding. I appreciate you sharing that story. That's a great story.
But you know what? I'll share too, just listening to you, Cindy, because Cindy and I share that we are at the same age and have a lot of similar stories in, you know, it was just a different ball game when you were going to work in the world in 1987. Yeah, those are different stories. But, you know, I love that you are such a beacon of, you know, it can be done. And I look at a lot of the men that I know on here and women without children and everything else, and how far we've come in being so respectful of that men and women are carrying the load of parenting together more so than ever in the history of the world.
Yep.
And that there's such a compassion for that on, you know, like I looking at the names on here, there's not a man on here that I know of that would want you to leave your 6-month-old now with babysitter that you didn't know, you know. And I recognize, I tip my hat to you and recognize the work it took for you to help change the world and change America, and to be at this place that you're still building into your daughters. So thank you for sharing all of those. I really appreciate it. And hats off to all of you who have grown so much that like we hear that. And please tell me that if you're thinking that would be okay, call me and we'll have a lovely free conversation on me. We have grown and the world is so much. Oh my gosh, the stuff
All
that
right,
I
we
watch
gotta
women
go.
my age do.
All right, James Cardy, you're
Yeah,
Yeah,
next.
no,
on.
absolutely. That's
James.
kind of a good transition, right? Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Isn't that the book that everybody's supposed to read?
Yes,
Mhm.
I'm gonna put your bio up for a second and then I'll take it down. But go ahead and just talk a little bit
Yeah.
about you.
No, that's totally fine. I have this conversation with my wife a lot. I still don't get it. I'm still a solutions person sometimes, and I'm not the best active listener. So always a good reminder. So thank you for sharing that. Both Alex and Cindy, great job. Alex, you basically mic dropped on me and took all the quality points and put them into a nice, concise format and explained it terrifically. So I'm going to kind of pivot from anything that I had planned. I'll introduce myself a little bit, give you some background, a little history on myself, but I want to get into a couple of the topics that Alex and Cindy both touched on, which maybe we can even expand to more of a collaborative discussion and people can chime in. So background by me, I was born and raised in white suburbia, Fairfield, Ohio. My dad was a school teacher, a football coach. My mom was a CEO at home. So little of that woman piece back in the 1980s. I'm also a millennial. And when I say millennial, I'm on the front end of that. I call myself an early millennial. So born in 1982, Alex hit home with a lot of the evolution of technology and how that's influenced who I am as a person and also how we are the bridge between generations. It's funny to look back and know that I didn't have a cell phone until I graduated college, right? That's kind of interesting. Instant Messenger was a big thing. Facebook came after college. So the advance of social media, and I think how people portray and engage in an introverted way has totally changed my perspective, and it changes the way that I think about life every day. That's a continuous evolution. Sometimes a little timid or scared about how that could influence or change the way that we experience life. There's some people on this phone, I'll call out Todd Wilkowski. I love being around Todd because he brings great energy every time I see him. And that to me is how I want my life to be shaped as an early stage millennial. I want to be around positive people, people who continually impact the community, impact their companies, and find ways to give back. So competitive, absolutely, right? That's a history of me being in athletics. Athletics also shaped me in a way where I was able to engage in diversity at an early age. It wasn't something that I really had to experience once I got to the professional world. And that is continually a hot topic of discussion, is diversity and inclusion. Growing up with two sisters also helped, experiencing that too. So anyway, more about me. So graduated Georgetown College in 2005, came to Fifth Third Bank. I think I might be the only one on this call with kind of this big corporate background. And it's interesting, 2005 to 2012, let's call it. Bank is a conservative place. I grew up in a conservative house. It kind of fit being comfortable. And I think Alex said, being okay with being uncomfortable, being comfortable with being uncomfortable really helps you continue to grow. And I think that was driven into my culture and into me when I met the leadership team that I'm a part of today. And it's a horizontal kind of structure for me. I am not a leader of people by title. My role is to coordinate or quarterback the bank for the client. And so nobody directly reports to me, but I have the opportunity every day to deal with people of all ages, genders, race, and age. And it's challenging. I mean, I still try to figure this out every day. It's fun to be challenged by my teammates. Thinking about communication patterns, I prefer to call somebody versus sending a text or an email. We also find that being in sales, that typically in order to get in touch with somebody, you do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. And today, a lot of email, text is how you're driving those relationships. And we're seeing that reaching out, you actually get a response from a CEO. So with that communication style, you're trying to figure it out amongst the age groups. And you think the younger, the less impersonal you want it to be. And Alex, I would agree with that. I do think it's more of an introverted society, and I think that's kind of where we're trending. But how you view that communication or how you read that communication can be interpreted so many different ways. You don't feel the voice inflection. You don't see the person's body language. Like being on this Zoom call feels a little different as well. So a great example of that, I sent a text message one morning before a big meeting to one of my teammates, and I said, let's go, like, let's get it today, let's have fun, and let's win. And the interpretation of that was, do you not think I'm prepared? Okay, didn't think of it like that. So I think the bridge of generations, it's important for us to continue to emphasize the importance of getting to know people and creating real relationships so that those relationships can be felt in different forms of communication.
Yeah.
Whether that be text or email. I know if I sent that text to Todd or if I sent that email to Todd, Todd would be like, Cardi, we're in it. Let's go. Let's win. Let's have fun. So totally different. Darcy, I feel like you've got a comment.
No, I mean, I'm just thinking about this whole concept of you're an extrovert, I'm an extrovert, my daughter's an extrovert. We're sort of like this whole concept that we're in an introverted world, and how that is, that's hard. It makes us anxious, right? I mean, and the other side, 4 years ago, it was the other way. I just thought, like, I'm thinking about how do you do that as an extrovert in this world, and your competitive nature? I mean, you could probably ruffle some feathers fairly easily, right?
Absolutely. I actually put on one of the pages that I'm looking at right now that I can be rigid, aggressive, and an ineffective communicator at times. And it's because I have a high level of urgency and will to succeed. And sometimes that can be viewed or misinterpreted, or I can actually express it in a way that's not received well. So general self-awareness is very important to create or bridge those relationships, something that I continually am working on, and I need a lot of work on that. But yes, you're exactly right, Darcy. That to me is the self-awareness piece is very important. I'm going to pivot a little bit too, because there's two other things that you mentioned, Darcy, at the very beginning, and that was attracting talent or retaining talent. And something that I think we do well at the bank is retaining talent. You and Cindy were here, what was that, 3 weeks ago now, maybe 2 weeks ago, and we went around the room and talked about how long we had been at the bank, and you heard a lot of 17 years or a lot of 20 years. And I think that has something to do with the culture. I think that has something to do with the people, but more importantly, how the longer you're here, the more that the bank and the people invest in you, and that you can feel that it's a welcoming culture. I think if you walked into the bank day one, you would say, hey, it's a little stuffy, but I think you start to feel who the bank is over time as you reach out and try to connect. And so when people do join the bank, we give them a list of people to connect with, and that list of 20 accept invites for breakfast, lunch, and happy hour pretty immediately. And so it kind of starts to branch your network so that you're not stuck to your particular group, because we all kind of walk to our chair every day and we want to go to work. And remembering that internal networking is a part of building a culture, or at least the culture that you may want. And you can help influence that culture by being a little bit extroverted and reaching out to people. So the attraction piece, we as a team attract talent. So over a year period of time, we will meet potential candidates and we will share feedback amongst the team. We want to get to know this person because this is a large investment of our time and the team's resources. And we all know how expensive it is to then have that person leave 6 months later. Not only is there client interruption, but there's also corporate and culture interruption. And so it's really important for us to have a longer journey with this person prior to bringing them on the team.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's good. I love that idea. Good.
So again, early stage millennial, I'm still more of a corporate person in that I like an office with a door, but welcome to 3 months ago when we came to this new floor on our 27th floor in the tower, and it's open concept. Everybody can see what you're doing. It's collaborative environment space. We still have that work-life, work from home balance ever since COVID hit. I think that will continue. But I don't think people want to come into the office to work anymore. I think they get more work done where they are more comfortable.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
you talked about coming into the office. It is a collaboration space. It's a teaching and coaching opportunity.
Oh, good.
It's a way to drive strategy, but not always necessarily to execute on that strategy. And so I think you have to have a balance of what you allow or not allow for, and where you see your teammates being the most successful. So I think tracking success along the way will prove out maybe which journey you should be on with how your team comes in and out the office.
James, I love your point just around, it's funny, we're reading different things constantly about what people want in their work environment and work from anywhere. But, just thinking about what you're saying sparks with me that whole piece of we're all individual. And just because we might jump to the conclusion that an introvert wants an office space. Well, it depends on what their needs are. I mean, I'm an extrovert, and put me out in an open space and I can't focus or function. And so the research is coming back about, that there's not a right way, wrong way with all of this. It's about what meets the needs of each person. But the other thing that's really standing out to me, just listening to you being on that early millennial scope of things, is the reminder for all of us, you and Alex are kind of, beginning and mid of that, what we would dub millennial range, vastly different in, what your experiences are. I mean, for all of us, I think that the time when we all gave in to this darn thing, was a pivotal point for all of us.
Absolutely.
And how old you were at that point in time, and how quick you adapt to things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that, I mean, my dad's so techie on stuff, he can run circles around me sometimes. So yeah, it is really cool to hear kind of where that is. So, all right, any last point before we move forward with Emily? This has been really thought-provoking for me to think about what you're saying on that individuality.
No, I mean,
power of it.
I think the last point that I would make, Cindy, is growing. I had the fortunate pleasure of growing up with grandparents who were part of the greatest generation.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to hear from them, and I experienced childhood, adulthood, and my early professional career with them being very active in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I got to hear about the Great Depression, and I got to hear about World War II. I got to hear about a lot of key events in our history that truly impacted and shaped the way that I come into work every day, and how I put my boots on. So I think the people around you help form who you are, and that's why I try to come in and grind every day, because I'm fortunate to have a job and career and people that care about what I'm trying to do.
Love it.
I've seen your people, and they care about what you're doing, and they're glad that you come in every day. So
Thanks,
that's
Cindy.
for sure.
All right. So, wow, I love this. Emily, you're going to take us home. You have
Hey.
about 10 or 15 minutes, and we may get to questions. We may not. This has been so thought-provoking from each of the panelists, and I've seen Emily, so she's going to bring us another perspective. Emily?
Yes. All right. Hi, everyone. I am Emily Rentschler, and I am here representing the millennial generation as well. And like Alex and James said, this encompasses people born 1981 to 1996. So we'll see how much we overlap here. I'm interested to see that. But to be very transparent, I was born in 1992. So I am on the later end of the millennials, close to the Gen Xers. And I graduated from college in 2015 from Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. My post-college career started in a local manufacturing company called Fecon. It's located in Lebanon, Ohio. And I started as an intern and made my way to sales coordinator position. And I worked at Fecon for just under 6 years. And then my career took a turn in April 2021 when I started at Swivel as the marketing specialist. And Swivel is a sales enablement and growth marketing company. I'm actually now the growth marketing manager, which makes me a first-time manager. And I'm integrated into our leadership team, so I'm learning a lot and growing very quickly. I want to start by saying I appreciate being here today, being the voice or a voice of the millennial generation, in addition to James and Alex. I'm going to do the best I can, but obviously everyone's experiences are different. We've seen that over the last few speakers, and my view is not the only view. So I've taken some time, I've interviewed some of my friends in order to get some different input. And I think that's really important when talking broadly about a generation. So
Great.
with that, oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm going to follow.
Oh.
I'm trying to get your handouts working for you, Emily.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to preface by saying, this is not my only view. So if you don't love our thoughts on different generations, don't just blame me. These are coming from my friends too. But I want to talk through some defining and what became repetitive themes between the millennials I spoke with. Then I'm going to leave you guys with some thought-provoking questions that I can't guarantee I have answers to, but they came to me during my research. And lastly, I have some tips on leading and working with millennials. So if we start on the first slide, I want to talk about longevity and commitment. So like I previously stated, I spent, over 5.5 years at FECON just out of college. This is not common among my peers. Many leave for promotions, title changes, or generally for a change. Kind of digging into my history, my parents both spent over 15 years at the same company. My dad still works for the company that he has been working for since I was a little kid. And I think that's something I learned from boomer parents, the value of commitment to one company and not really using one company as a step stool to your next promotion. However, this seems uncommon, like among my peers in my generation. So I kind of pose this question of, do companies really value long-term commitment from employees, or are millennials on the right track of switching up their jobs for promotions or for a raise? And that I also, while James was talking about his point earlier, that next level of, is it culture that's keeping employees over a generational divide.
Yeah.
So my next slide talks about entitlement. So as a generation, millennials are notoriously labeled entitled. So my big question was like, why? Why do we feel entitled, and why do we come off as entitled? One big idea I came up with was the fact that as kids, many of us heard over and over again, go to college so you can get a good job, so you can make money. There was this assumption that once we got our hands on a college degree, that we were like entitled to good pay and happiness. And my question is, could that have affected our feelings of entitlement? Could that have given us reasons why we feel entitled to more money or a better title in the workforce? It also brings up the idea of participation trophies. So as a kid, I very much remember hearing adults, make jokes about how everyone gets a participation trophy these days, which wasn't the case in my parents' generation. And so, my question is, did we not have a chance to fail or become middle of the pack the same way that other generations did? And, like I said earlier, is this a reason we feel more entitled to money or titles? And I've got to throw in not to blame other generations, but it's definitely things that we learn and observe from, generations before us, and especially what we hear from our parents.
Yeah.
So in terms of, so I have social and collaboration. These are two concepts that are important to millennials, but they go very hand in hand. So I wanted to put them on the same slide. So millennials are extremely social inside, outside of work, and it's an important part of their work-life balance. And because of that, collaboration is also valuable to millennials. And it's pretty obvious where this stems from. The communication technology boom, having cell phones in middle school, high school, even late college, gave us the ability to have constant contact with our friends and family. It creates less alone time for us than our generations before us. So we can be alone in our room while texting our neighbor, or texting our friends 2 neighborhoods over or on the other side of the world. Social media, it's pretty straightforward. The boom of social interactions, that played a massive part in how a lot of us grew up. And lastly, just wanted to touch on even online video games. Generations before us, you could only play those games when your friends were there with you at that moment. But now we can jump online and we can play with anyone at any time of the day. So I just think that's some different things to think about. And in other words, we haven't had as much of a need for the independence as the generations before us. I think that's good and bad. I do think that that's what's promoted this need for social interaction and collaboration in millennials. And then I think that need will continue with generations later. And then my thought-provoking question coming out of this would be, you know, are millennials oversaturated with social interaction? And the generations after us, will they be oversaturated? And will that keep us from our jobs more than other generations?
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
And then tech savviness, a word I've created. So millennials are very unique when it comes to technology. And I know we've talked about this a little bit, but, you know, we've come of age with the internet and cell phones. You know, we've experienced dial-up, Wi-Fi, home phones, cell phones, cassettes, CDs, streaming music, you know, and most recently, like we've just talked about, the boom of Zoom and the virtual world thanks to COVID. Because of this, I think this is a big reason why there's a lot of positive reactions from millennials to the virtual work from home life. You know, the people I spoke with, the friends I spoke with really are loving this work from home environment. And it was also a very easy adjustment for them to make. So this abrupt change, technology-based change, was very easy for millennials to, and especially people in my half, I guess, of the millennial spectrum, it was very easy for us to make that adjustment, which I think is interesting for our generation, especially people around my age. You know, we're still in the early years of our work life, but that was such an easy change for us to make as opposed to our parents. And however, I did find that due to millennials' love of social interactions, many are missing that social aspect of work, which I thought was really interesting. So, for example, I've interviewed some young people recently for new positions at Swivel. We are completely remote. However, we do have a co-working space that can be utilized downtown Cincinnati as we wish. And I've noticed in interviews that people are, or, you know, these young people are really focusing on this co-working space. They're asking us how often we're going, where is it, like showing a lot of interest in meeting in person and going somewhere and working. So, you know, my question is, have technological advances made millennials too dependent on technology? But also, is this a reason for their interest in being, like, is this a reason for their interest and need for social interaction? Do we rely so much on all this technology? And also, do we thrive on it, but then which is more important to us, this technology or our social interactions? So I just thought, you know, it's kind of interesting that that's so important to young people. My next point is openness and abdicating. So millennials are more open with personal feelings and mental health than a lot of previous generations. I think generations after us are actually even better than we are at it. But because of that, I would say, you know, younger generations are generally prefer more open dialogue with our managers. So I think, you know, my thought out of this is, you know, how do other generations view this open dialogue that's needed or wanted by millennials? And is it abdicating or is it oversharing? You know, it's kind of a new wave of being more open about, you know, our health or our mental health or all these personal topics, maybe at home personal topics. You know, I even think about what Cindy was saying with, you know, childcare. Would you have walked in the office and just told them this is why I'm flustered? Probably not. But I think that this new wave of young workforce, they're going to be more open and they're going to be willing to tell you, hey, I'm stressed because I have a kid at home with a babysitter that I don't know. You know, is that oversharing or is that advocating for yourself and your feelings? And is that appropriate and needed in the workforce?
Love it.
All right, so my next one, this is the one I think could get me in trouble a little bit, but surprisingly, this was not one of the ones I went into thinking I would talk about, but surprisingly, many of my peers said that when it comes to leadership, they hate a manager that micromanages. So I thought, like, where the heck does this stem from? Why is like micromanaging coming up to all these millennials? Is it a generational thing? Or does everyone just hate being micromanaged? Probably the latter. But I wanted to come up with like a reason why it could be more triggering for millennials. This is what I came up with. So I think that many of our parents were a lot more involved in our lives. You know, they had the resources to be, unlike their parents. So resources like communication, growing up with cell phones and middle, high, and low college gave our parents access to us and gave access to our schedule, AKA helicopter parents. We've all heard the term. And it was easier for our parents to become helicopter parents because they have, you know, communication, technology, all these things that can keep them more involved in our life rather than my parents' parents saying, come home at dark. You know, they're just trusting you that you'll be home by dark rather than having our GPS or, you know, knowing exactly where we are. So my idea is, you know, could this have played a role in some millennials' reactions to being micromanaged, or could that kind of like be an underlying factor? Obviously not the reason, but maybe an idea of where some of that could have come from in our generation specifically.
Oh, love it. So
Yeah.
good. Oh,
So lastly, I want to do tips working with and around millennials. So I'm kind of summing up, you know, what I just went over, but creating an open dialogue for work and personal topics when appropriate, you know, understanding that it might just be an outlet or a time to be heard, but it is needed for a lot of young people. Creating a social environment or social outlets for your team. So for example, at Swivel on Fridays, we oftentimes like to come up with some fun little topic we can all connect on. Last Friday, we did our favorite childhood nicknames, and we all went around and just like blabbered about our nicknames and how they came about. And, you know, it's a way that we can all connect, and it's something that our team values, being able to talk about stuff that's not work related. And obviously you could also do outlets like, you know, team lunches or Top Golf or something fun, but definitely that social environment, that social outlet for young people, it's really important to us. Encouraging collaboration. I'd say this is pretty straightforward, but I did want to share, I was on Instagram the other day, and I was thinking about Instagram and TikTok, how we have all these dances and all these trends of people like copying a dance, and, you know, they would be wearing something different, but it's really the exact same dance, and everyone's just doing this exact same dance. And I really think that that's a form of our generation collaborating rather than, you know, and obviously the generations after us, but rather than being like a competition, you know, we're all liking each other's and we're all in it and we're all doing this trend because it's a trend that we're all doing together. So I think that just kind of is one more proof that our generation like loves to collaborate even when it's not in the same room. And then lastly, don't micromanage. So, you know, be sure to give young people space to work and be creative, you know, have confidence in us that we can do our job without our hands being held. I will say I personally feel like the most confident when my hand is being held, but through projects, but in those cases, I'm not learning and I'm not growing. So, you know, making sure that you're giving us space, I think is really important. Yeah, so millennials, we need space to grow into the future leaders like the generations before us. So that's
Awesome.
all I've got.
That was so good. I love the thought-provoking concepts. And really, I think what I've learned the last hour and a half is that there's not one answer, right? I mean,
Yeah.
everyone is going to have their own way to handle it. My quick story is my husband works at a larger commercial real estate, and I've shared this with a few of you, but they did 6 months, a big project. I've shared this for 6 months about their work from home policy. Like it's it's a large company. And so they haul these teams. I mean, they spent like gobs of money, gobs of time, multi-generation, you know, males, females, lots of diversity considered. At the end of it, they give the presentation. And do you know what the answer was?
What?
Department manager should decide. So, I mean, so I think like my takeaway to all my clients and you guys is how important department managers are, how important team managers are, how important people are starting at the beginning. People work for people. And what I learned is that everyone's the same and we all have different needs, but also how important, and I will still say it, I know that some of my clients are on it, like that department manager and that team manager and that first level is wildly important for you retaining that employee 3 years or beyond. Because if they don't have that person, then they are gone. I mean, no doubt. So I'm not sure what to take away there other than make sure you're listening. All right, shout out, applause.
Woo! Dang, y'all. I need an hour to decompress all I'm thinking.
I know. All right, so I got 2 minutes, and the only thing I wanted to set up for 2 minutes is just a little commercial for our Stretch Your Impact class, because 3 of the people did it here. Alex just wasn't available, but we are doing this big like opportunity for people to really grow and accelerate and take control of really who they are. We're going to do another one in April. We're going to have a virtual, and then in May, we're going to have an in-person. You'll have a lot more. We'll do a huge amount of information on it, but I wanted to set it up with this group because I think this group gets it, but it's a really effective and efficient way. It's in a virtual or in an in-person for someone to really dig deep in who they are, where are they, where do they want to be, and how do they get there? And then they come and really own that. So we've done it a couple of times. We're going to do it again just before we really scale and make it happen. But, I think what we learned in this class is what we are, this is where, own it, who we are, what we are, and then to ask if there's some changes we want to make. I mean, is there a vision, a desired state where we want to be? And maybe that requires a stretch. Maybe it requires a jump, a leap, a risk. And this program, I think, will help you do it. This is the outcome document. It's really not meant to be overwhelming to you right now, just to recognize that you get a leadership playbook out of here. And so that's really the last little commercial, other than we always say, why did we name this company Stretch? Why are we doing Stretch? Is because we believe in potential. We believe that requires effort and challenge and uncomfortableness, but we think people are capable of a lot more than they think. And so these panelists blew my mind and Cindy's mind, and awesome. And we appreciate it. And you will too get something very powerful in the mail from us. It's going to be amazing. It might be a Starbucks gift card, but it will be amazing. Not sure, because we gotta give back to you guys. So good. That's it. Cindy, you want to take it home with anything? Wrap it
I
up.
just appreciate all of you so much. Just, I can't imagine being with a better group of people in life, and learning together and growing together. So thank you all for being here. And we'll be back with more stuff. Let us know what you want to learn and we'll do the legwork.